Hello, everyone. I'm Tony Southcott, and welcome to our Game of Thrones recap. This is for Season 8, Episode 2, which I just got the title of, and it makes a whole lot more sense than Episode 69, like it was glitching out to say, and that is A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Which, by the way, part of the reason why they're putting numbers up beforehand is they're trying to keep spoilers to a minimum, and sometimes episode titles can say just a little bit too much. So that's the reason HBO is given for not doing this. You have to wait almost an hour after the episode to actually get an episode title. And episode 69 was a little bit related to the whole 69 thing. It's the sex number. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. We're going to be covering a lot with this episode. I'm not sure if we're going to go scene for scene like I have in the past, because there's a lot of sort of repeat scenes happening. So we're going to cover some main story beats, and we're going to kind of combine some scenes together as far as the continuity goes, just to get to the point. So let's get to it. So in the intro, one of the first things you notice is that Last Hearth is actually in this. I don't think it was there last week. They're using the intro to show the encroachment of the undead. You see outside of Winterfell a bunch of different blocks showing kind of what was on the war table, representing the undead being there. So we're getting some kind of cool stuff as far as introductions showing where the dead actually are. I definitely like the detail work here. Wouldn't have worked so much for every other season. I'm sure they could have done something, but I feel like this fits it a little bit more because we're literally like in the end game right now. First scene, we have Jaime getting completely grilled by Dany. And it makes sense. Like, he did kill her father. He started way more than she even knows about the War of the Five Kings. And there's a lot of people that want him to answer, but it's just one man who's obviously broken, who isn't bringing a Lannister army with him. There's a lot of questions here on if they should trust him. I'm glad that Brienne stood up and kind of was in Jaime's corner. And there's a lot of interesting dynamics between Brienne and Jaime. The fact that Brienne most likely is full on in love with him, but has lived a life that never allowed her to do this. This is something that the people in the post-show were talking about. Some of the showrunners were talking about how she's never had a chance to actually let those feelings kind of grow or be a thing. And in some moments, they're sort of bubbling up here. But she's able to vouch in a way that gets Sansa on board. And in this moment, I don't think that Daenerys felt she had enough political capital to go completely against Sansa. She's trying to get her a little more on her side. And you get moments in this episode where they're trying to get her to recant on some of her mistakes. Jorah comes up to her directly and talks about like her needing Tyrion after she kind of implied that Tyrion wasn't going to have like the hand after this. Which, another thing, there's a lot of things that are death flags in this series, is what they're called, where people are probably not going to make it. And there are so many in this episode you can't even track, so I'm not sure they have any meaning. When Tyrion says, one of you guys are going to be wearing this afterwards, makes me think that Tyrion might not make it through the battle, but he also knows he's about to get fired because all of his plots have been failing. So to have Jorah, who didn't like Tyrion because he got the hand, actually get, like, kind of build Tyrion back up in Daenerys' eyes is important. I feel like the main thing about this episode is they tried to cut out a lot of the melodrama. Like, I didn't know how Sansa was going to react to seeing Theon, and she full-on embraced it. Like, there's a lot of beef being squashed right here, and that's because people are facing down this enemy that will most likely kill them all, at least in their minds. And I like that. There is still some drama here. There's a lot of melodrama because of familial issues. But it's not the kind of manufactured stuff that we got used to seeing last season with, like, the whole, is Sansa and Arya going to go against each other? It's like, no, that was manufactured and that was false and it wasn't even a thing. And we're going to keep on building and building and building, and we're going to see some of these old beefs get crushed. So that is what I thought the main point of this episode was, as well as kind of giving us these last wholesome moments before the full storm hits, and these last 4 episodes take us home. It's getting tense, and I know there's going to be a lot of people complaining about this episode because it's not, they want to see the battle. They know there's only like 5 to 6 total hours left in the series if you count all the episode bonus time. And they're tired of seeing people talk. And I understand it a little bit, but you need these characters to breathe a little bit, especially because there's so many reunions. There's so many characters that didn't see each other until these last couple seasons. Everything's been brought together and you need to see their dynamics. You need to see Arya being able to talk to the Hound again. You need to see, well, we didn't fully need to see Tormund doing his thing. We just wanted to see that. That's just something that's glorious in every way. But let's get back to the kind of the list here. I'm going to go back to the other scene real quick. Bran has a moment here where he could have fully exposed Jaime. In the books, the Blood Raven kind of deleted. In the books, the Three-Eyed Raven kind of deleted out the memory that he was pushed out of the window, just so that there wouldn't be any sort of like lingering issues. I don't know what the Raven was trying to do, and I think it makes more sense that Bran actually knows what's happening right now, especially because he said like the things we do for love, which is the thing that that was said to him right before he was pushed out of the tower. This is a moment where he knows that every single thing they need has to be in play. Like, it's weird that Bran doesn't actually know what's coming. He might know a little more than he's letting on. He might be trying to force them on a path, but like the past is set, and he tried to linger too long in the past, and he made that part of the past that was set. If he knows the future and he's trying to put people in their places to make a certain outcome happen, the outcome's already happened. And he drops a line that's like, how do you know we'll get through all this? I think the actual line, let's see, the actual line is pretty much like, we don't know if we'll get through this. And I don't know if they're going to do this. Like, I don't think that show is going to end with Cersei being like on the throne waiting for the undead to come to King's Landing and have it end that way. There's a chance, but I don't think it's going to happen. There's a beat here. I'm just going to cover everything that happens with Arya and Gendry real quick. Like, we see a couple quick scenes with them, like where she's wanting that weapon. She goes there. She's kind of flirting with them, throwing the daggers. I think they're actually spearheads, but just throwing the obsidian and the dragon glass around. And this is the first time we've seen Arya actually become kind of sexual in this show. Like, there's been maybe slightly flirty moments, but we've never seen her just full on embrace that side of her. And there's going to be a lot of people, and I was reading Reddit after this, that were really creeped out by the scene because they still see her as a 12-year-old. And, like, in this series, she's a fair amount older than that. The actress is over 20 years old. Like, I thought it was odd to see her because she has been not quite asexual, but she hasn't been as interested in that. But she also has kind of an impulsive streak. She has a fiery streak to her, so it wasn't out of character for her to go and hook up with Gendry. I feel like that's not the most weird thing I've ever heard, that somebody wants to experience that possibly before they die. There's a lot of people complaining about it. I don't know if that was actually Maisie Williams. I think that was probably a body double. I know that they got Emilia Clarke to do naked scenes and all that as late as season 6, but I'm not 100% sure that that's actually her, and I don't think it really matters. But it was a little bit unexpected. Once again, I don't think it was bad for the characters. I think that it's kind of cool that you're getting the Baratheons and the Starks reunited in such a way. But it's, like, I know there's going to be a lot of to-do and people complaining about that. It didn't bother me. Like, it was different, but it wasn't bad. And with episode 69 being the thing, we knew there was going to be something sexual happening. We were talking a little bit about melodrama earlier, and this gets set up whenever Brienne is kind of in an argument with Jaime. She's wondering, why are you here? Like, what's going on? And he's saying he's not that guy anymore. What are his intentions? Why, like, she's never been in his presence long enough to not be insulted, like, by him in some way, because he's very coy. He's just kind of a jerk. But he's at a point where he's seeking only to be, like, forgiven for his sins that he's put up against everyone. He's trying to make amends for the problems in his life and the things that he's caused. And I admire Jaime for that. I've thought that Jaime was a good character since I think it was season 4 whenever he was helping Brienne. Like, he was on the road to redemption at that point. And they set up a little bit of that melodrama, and then sitting around the fire, they completely fix it. And that's the reason for the name of this episode. There's so much of this episode that's sat around different parts, and we're going to get to that big one here in a minute, where you've just got two people, like, talking very candidly. One of my favorite is seeing Jorah, who a lot of people forget that it's Jorah Mormont, so he's talking to his little cousin Lyanna, who is a crowd favorite, someone who I think has a mild shot at the Iron Throne, but doesn't want it. I like her a lot. She's awesome. Weird fan theories say she could be the daughter of Tormund because Tormund had sex with a bear. Bear is the sign of the Mormont house. There's a lot of different weird things behind that. But I think that scene was actually really cool, seeing the two of them interact. And she's definitely the type that would be like out there fighting even as a kid. I knew that she was going to be doing that as soon as I saw her in armor. And to see just that little interaction between like the Mormonts was really cool. And then we saw Sam come up, and I was worried last week that there was going to be a lot of problems between Sam and Daenerys, and there might still be there, but there's not between him and Jorah. He actually give Heartsbane to Jaime, which is incredibly generous. That's his family's sword. I don't know if he's lending it to him. I don't know if he's like giving it to him forever, but he wants him to wield this in this battle, which ups Jaime's odds of survival a little bit, but might also be a death flag because people are starting to forgive him. Like I said, there's a ton of moments where people are just sitting around a fire. There's like Jaime and Tyrion starting out first, and then people start coming in Sir Davos. Everybody starts gathering around the fire. And we see some of the most awkward action I've seen in this entire series, in which Tormund is talking about why he got the name Giantsbane. And it's partially because he killed a giant. And then we get to a point where it's like, did this really happen? He claims that he was taken into the bed of a giant woman where he suckled at her for 3 months, and that's why he grew to be so strong. He is a large man, but he's not exactly a giant, and that seems like something that would get you pounded into jelly. But he's flexing in front of Brienne because he's got the hots for Brienne. Brienne is in love with Jaime, and Jaime does one of the more meaningful things I've ever seen him do, like an act of generosity that unites a lot of people that are worried and scared and hurt and not like they're just not doing so well. And this is the moment where he knights Brienne, and that knighting is one of the like kinder moments I've seen in this series, which unfortunately might lead to the death of Brienne, where I think she's going to save Jaime's life, or vice versa. One of the two is not going to make it out of this. The problem is it kind of finished Brienne's arc a little bit, where the thing she wanted was validation. She wanted to feel like she belonged. She's never felt like she belonged anywhere, ever. She's just the big awkward girl that's always been into fighting, that's always been like away from feminine things, and she's had the judgment of her family and everyone else for so long. And to be validated that she's a knight, whenever she literally might be the most just person that's still alive on this show, she is the type that's like a Ned Stark, the way you would hope knights would be, uncompromisingly good. And she's probably the last one left that's entirely that. Jon has that, but he's also executed his own people before. But I think Brienne summarizes the vows of that knighthood more than anyone else. And I love that scene. I got a little emotional watching it, especially because she's just beaming with happiness whenever it happens. You've got Tyrion toasting her, you've got Tormund like clapping, and it's just a beautiful scene. And along with that, we have Podrick singing a new original song. They got a lot of mileage out of the Castamere song, and if they would have done another rehash of something like that, I would have been disappointed. Instead, they gave us a very simple song, and yes, that was Podrick, the actor, singing it. Like, they knew that he had a good voice, and he kind of volunteered to do this. So it was a really good fit, and it reminded me a lot of Pippin in Lord of the Rings. Not quite as epic of a scene, because the way that song paired up with like the charge of the knights and everything, like, and the supposed monarch just being a good glutton, like the way that whole scene like paired up in Lord of the Rings was one of my favorite sequences in any movie. But it had flavors of that. You have a woman mournfully dancing with the ghosts of her ancestors and fallen kings, and she never wants to leave. And it's this idea that like we're on the edge of death and we're remembering all these things that are so far behind us, and we're not moving forward until we can kill the ghosts of our past. And I think in this, that stands for a few different things. That stands for the White Walkers in a literal sense, where you've got like the undead at your door. You've got the ghosts of your past. You've got Jon dealing with his lineage. You've got so many other people dealing with these things that they've done, and that goes back to Jaime trying to be a good man and a good knight. You've got Tyrion trying to live up beyond just being like the imp, and so many of these other characters just trying to get through the night. And I really liked how that song kind of highlighted everything. Maybe it was a little bit of a simple song, like they say the final line like 8 times. I don't know if that was just a pad length or whatever, but it was still good and it was still haunting and it was still very pretty. And I very much enjoyed that. Another instance where they were trying to crush some of the melodrama is between Sansa and Daenerys, and I thought that this was actually fully mended here, but towards the end of the scene, she kind of loses Sansa. Like, she's talking about how men do stupid things, but now she's caught up in Sansa's brother's war and all this, and I really enjoyed that scene. And until like she brought up like the goal of the Iron Throne and what happens next, what happens to the North, because Dany doesn't want another kingdom in the North, and it's still a sticking point. But the thing is, they made important inroads. This is one of the few times that Daenerys has actually validated Sansa and made her feel like that she was Lady Winterfell, that she had some autonomy, that her opinions mattered. And I think it's a much more effective approach, especially with a Northerner, as opposed to just being like, well, she needs to bend the knee because I'm the queen. It's like, in the North, you're not going to get respect until you've earned it, and Dany hasn't quite earned that yet. Maybe after this battle. Another major thing that we hadn't seen before is this is Bran's first time talking directly about what the Night King wants, and it's basically to bring about the Endless Night, which is something that happened kind of under the First Men, like the early Starks. Like they with the Children of the Forest were able to kind of build the wall, push the White Walkers back, and like the Long Night, and basically it's trying, like the Night King is trying to do that again. And part of what he wants to do is to kill Bran, because Bran is tapped into the memories of the land. Like, he has the access to the Weirwood trees and everything that they stand for, and the old gods, all the information of all these generations. And if he kills their past, he's kind of killing their future. So he, like Sam says, that they're basically like animals. So we've got a very clear point that the Night King is going to be gunning for Bran, which goes back to those theories that Bran is the Night King. I don't subscribe to that. This might make a little bit more sense if, like, nothing worked out and Bran is trying to, like, basically he warred too far back in the past and he's trying to kill himself so he doesn't get stuck in this loop with the Night King. I don't think that's it, but I'm starting to see why people have that theory on the Night King. I don't believe it, but it might be a thing. Just looking through my notes about the random things that are happening, more death flags, like Grey Worm and Missandei are talking. There's no way Grey Worm makes it through this next episode, or at least this battle, because he tried to make plans afterwards to see Missandei. That's not happening. Like, straight up, Grey Worm is dead. Like, I really don't think he can get through this because he's looking forward and beyond. And that sucks, but I'm going to put him officially on my Deadpool list. Also, we're seeing the return of Ghost, which is something where people have been complaining about that for ages and ages and ages. And I'm more of the idea that it's hard to animate that correctly, so like having him not acknowledged in the background of shots is a cheap shot way of adding Ghost in to kind of give a little bit of fan service. And I'm not sure it added anything, but there are a lot of people that were excited to see it back. That was a good scene that showed the three men of the Night's Watch, like Jon, Sam, and I can't remember the Lord Commander's name right now, but like it was showing their bond as soldiers, as the Night's Watch, and just saying like whoever's last alive burns the others. And I don't know if that's going to happen this time. I feel like Sam has given away his family stuff, but he also had the point that he was the first one to kill a White Walker. He's killed Thens. He's killed so many other things, and he's just somewhat like he's one of the few people that's really progressed things and given everybody a shot here because of what he knew with Dragonglass, because of all this other stuff. Sam is so essential to the story, and he's just kind of a like weak person in the eyes of Westeros, even though he's very strong-willed as a person. He's just not a great fighter. I love what they've been doing with him in this series, or in this season, and his competence and his confidence is a little bit higher, but he's still the same character in the end. So he's not going to be the guy that can stand up to a brutal horde, but he will be able to defend himself and probably help the people in the crypt. The crypt is an interesting part, and this is speculation, purely speculation on my part right now. With the crypt, there are a lot of people that say that the Starks made a deal with the White Walkers in the past, and that's part of the reason why they were able to end the Long Night. And it's weird because there's some of those Starks were involved in old magic, and there's been talk that the reason why they're carrying iron weapons in the tombs for all of them is because they could be raised by the Night King and basically just rip apart the people inside the tomb. That because they were part White Walker before, they might be fully returning to that there. And that would really suck for all the people in the tomb. Like, that would really mess everything up. All these best laid plans to keep the civilians alive. If that happened, then you would have just a door burst open and all the people from the crypt come out against the army and flank them from behind, which would be absolutely devastating. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it's an interesting lore point in that, like, the Starks did share some of that, and some people think they share blood with the Night King and the original White Walkers. So there's some weirdness there. Like, it's deep lore stuff, and it's all speculation, but I'd love to know what you guys think about that. Which, as a side note, if you have any comments on this episode, I love to hear them. I'm going to be responding to all comments if you tweet me at Human Echoes or at T Southcott. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. The final thing for this episode is the revelations to Dany of Jon being Aegon Targaryen. And I'm sure this is very jarring for her because all of a sudden she realized that he has a full claim on the throne. Her greatest ambitions might fail. That if she marries him, she's marrying her nephew. There's a lot to unpack there for her. And right whenever she's trying to deal with that, first off, she doesn't believe the sources. It's her brother, his best friend. That makes sense. Be skeptical. Especially because she doesn't know about, like, Bran's tree net in full detail. Nobody really understands. Tyrion tries to this episode, and then it cuts because reasons. I would have really liked to be in on that conversation. That was one of the few times I was irritated with this episode. I wanted to see Tyrion's understanding of how it worked. And I'm a little concerned about how it's going to turn out. I don't think that she's going to do anything to Jon, though. I think that their focus is going to be squarely on the battle at hand. But I can tell that there's been a pretty severe blow towards their entire relationship. And I'm not sure if Jon's going to keep his parentage a secret. I could see him doing that. I could see him carrying that burden just to not hurt her. And also because he doesn't really want the Iron Throne, even if he is heir to it. I just don't see him forcing the issue on that. I could see him sort of pseudo becoming it and just marrying his aunt just because. I don't know if they would, like, end up having kids or not. Like, it might not even matter because Dany might not be able to have kids. So all of a sudden they get thrown into this, and you've got, like, a little bit of the soap opera stuff where it's like, we were sleeping together the whole time, but we're brothers. Or not brother and sister. That's an entirely different set of people. But it's interesting to see how she took that and was so skeptical. And they'll figure it out afterwards, whoever survives. If Jon ends up dying, it's a lot simpler for her. If Dany ends up dying, it gets real weird for Jon and his ambitions as, like, Warden of the North and so on. I don't know if he would want to go back down and fully destroy Cersei. I think he would, but I don't know where it ends there. Like, I'm betting both of them make it through. There wasn't any, like, plot armor taken off in that scene. A lot of other people had plot armor removed, but not so much Jon Snow. Like, they kind of put more on. But once again, going back to this episode, the thing that people are going to be bothered by is the fact that so much of it was just sitting around a fire talking. And I think the show needs that breath to really prepare us for what's coming, especially because so many of these characters are not going to make it past this next episode. It's going to be a bloodbath. It might be as bad as the Red Wedding for your favorite characters, and it's going to be brutal. I don't know if the next 2 episodes are battles. I don't know when, like, if it's going to be over and they start going to the south. I don't know how any of this shakes out. I'm excited as hell to see, and I want to hear what you guys have to say. So tell me what you think is coming up in the next episode. Who's going to survive? Who do you think is guaranteed to die? And yeah, just go ahead and hit that sub and that like button. I would love to hear more from you guys. I will respond to every comment in this thread, and I will talk to you about Game of Thrones more next week as we get to episode 3, which is still untitled. Bye, everybody. Thank you for watching.